The universe has a way of balancing itself, ensuring that no one, no matter how clever, manipulative, or deceitful, escapes the consequences of their actions. You see, life is like a perfect equation, and those who throw thorns in your path will eventually find themselves walking barefoot on their own traps. They may think they're orchestrating your downfall, but in reality, they're only fast-tracking their own. Because when you are chosen, when you walk with purpose, the universe aligns itself in ways they never saw coming. They believed they could toy with your destiny, that their tricks, lies, and manipulations would be enough to shake you. But what they never realized is that every attempt to break you was only refining you. Like a sword forged in fire, their hatred became the heat that strengthened you. And now, while they are drowning in their own venom, you are rising higher than ever. The irony. The very destruction they wished upon you became the foundation of your success. They built their plans on sand, but you built on solid ground. There is no escaping cosmic balance. You don't have to chase revenge, because fate itself will be their greatest punishment. The guilt will eat them alive. The regret will become their shadow. And while they spend their days looking over their shoulder, haunted by their own games, you will be unstoppable, untouchable. That's the power of being chosen. The power to rise beyond their reach, to thrive in a way they never imagined. They wanted to see you fail? Let them watch instead. Watch you win, watch you elevate, watch you become someone they can never touch again. And if you're ready to claim that power, to step fully into the life you were meant for, make sure to like, subscribe, and step into your unstoppable future. Because this is just the beginning. Number 1. Never overestimate someone's role in your life. Detach before they assume control. Some people truly believe they are the center of everything. They convince themselves that without them, the world stops turning, the sun refuses to rise, and the stars lose their shine. They thought you were just another planet caught in their orbit, trapped by their gravity, unable to function without their presence. But what they never realized, what they could never fathom, is that you were never just another planet. You were the entire universe, and they were just another temporary visitor passing through. They overestimated their importance in your life. In their mind, they were irreplaceable. The reason you smiled, the person you woke up thinking about, the one you'd never dare to walk away from. They assumed that because you cared, because you showed up, because you gave them your time, your energy, and maybe even your heart, it meant they had control. But here's the brutal truth they never considered. You weren't dependent on them. You simply chose them. And that's a distinction they were never prepared to understand. See, manipulators, game players, and emotional opportunists live off one illusion. They want you to believe you need them. That without their attention, their validation, their approval, you'd feel empty. That's why they play their little tricks. The delayed responses, the hot and cold behavior, the sudden withdrawal of affection, just to see if you'll chase. And when you did, when you showed you cared, it made them feel untouchable, powerful, like they had you right where they wanted. But then something changed. Maybe it was slow, maybe it hit all at once. But one day, you woke up. You saw through the game, through the manipulation, through their desperate need to keep you hooked. And when you stopped playing, when you stopped reacting, stopped engaging, stopped caring, that's when their world started to crack. That's when the panic set in. Because here's the truth they never prepared for. Your presence in their life was a privilege, not a guarantee. They never thought about what would happen if you simply stopped caring. They assumed your patience was endless, that your loyalty was their unbreakable safety net. But then, without warning, you were done. Not because they won, not because they got you, but because they lost something they never truly valued until it was gone. Now, they sit there, replaying every moment, every word, every action, trying to figure out how they miscalculated so badly. They thought you'd beg. You didn't. They thought you'd crumble. You stood taller than ever. They thought you'd always be there. You vanished from their world without looking back. And now the realization hits them like a collapsing tower. They were never as essential to you as they believed. The power they thought they had over you, it was never real. It was borrowed, an illusion sustained only by your willingness to engage. And now, as they sit in the ruins of their own arrogance, haunted by their own mistakes, they're forced to face the one truth they never wanted to accept. They needed you to feel powerful, but you never needed them to feel whole. Number 2. Stop playing a game you can't win. Walk away and watch them lose. Some people think life is a chessboard, and they're the master strategist, always moving pieces, always staying one step ahead. They thought they had you figured out, that you would keep chasing, keep questioning, keep proving yourself. They thrived on the mind games, the push and pull, the mixed signals, the strategic silence. Every time they disappeared, they expected you to come running. Every time they planted doubt, they expected you to fix things. It wasn't love for them, it was a power trip. But here's what they never saw coming. The second you stopped reacting, the entire game collapsed. Suddenly, their delayed texts didn't make you anxious. Their cold behavior didn't send you spiraling. Their silence? It wasn't breaking you. It was giving you peace. And that's when they felt it, that deep, creeping dread. The realization that they weren't in control after all. Because a game only works when both players are engaged, and the moment you decided you were done, their entire illusion shattered. The same tactics they once used to manipulate you now left them feeling powerless. They spent so much time testing your patience, assuming it was infinite, that they never stopped to consider what would happen when you finally got tired. And now they're the ones restless, checking their phone, waiting for the response that isn't coming, replaying their moves, wondering where it all went wrong. They thought they were toying with you, but in reality, they were fueling their own downfall. Because while they were busy playing games, you were waking up. And when you wake up, you realize just how ridiculous it is to keep entertaining someone who treats love like a competition. Now, they're stuck watching you slip away, unable to do a thing about it. That thrill they once felt when they thought they had you wrapped around their finger. Gone, replaced by a gut-wrenching truth they can't ignore. They never actually had control to begin with. They weren't pulling the strings. You were just allowing them to believe they were. And now that you've walked away, they're left with nothing but regret. Regret for mistaking your patience for permanence. Regret for thinking they could toy with someone they never truly understood. Regret for losing a game that should have never been played in the first place. And the worst part, they played themselves. Number 3. Don't let them treat you like an option. They'll learn the hard way. Arrogance blinds people. It makes them believe they can throw away something rare and pick up something just as valuable like it's nothing. That's exactly what they thought about you. In their mind, you were just another option, easily replaceable, someone they could swap out when boredom hit or when they felt like playing the field. They convinced themselves that finding another version of you would be effortless. After all, people connect every day, right? But life has a brutal way of exposing the foolish. At first, they probably felt confident. Maybe they even made sure you saw them with someone new, flaunting their so-called upgrade, thinking it would get a reaction out of you. But that's where the real game began. Not for you, but for them. Because while they were busy proving a point, something they never expected started to happen. The cracks began to show. The new person? They didn't understand them like you did. The conversations felt empty, the laughter wasn't as effortless, and the emotional security they once took for granted. Nowhere to be found. They tried to replicate what they had with you, but every attempt fell flat. See, they thought they were simply replacing an object in their life, but you weren't just an object. You were an experience. A one-of-a-kind presence that can't be copied, upgraded, or traded in. And that's when it finally hit them. It wasn't you that was the problem. It was them. They mistook their own immaturity for power. They assumed they could replace something rare with something easy. But finding attention is easy. Finding validation is effortless. Finding someone like you? That's the part they got wrong. Now, they sit in the aftermath of their own arrogance, haunted by the reality that they gambled with something priceless and lost. They thought you'd watch from the sidelines, hurt, waiting for them to come back. Instead, you moved forward, unbothered, leaving them in a cycle of cheap imitations, none of which will ever measure up. They know they messed up, and now, no matter where they go, no matter who they meet, they will always be searching for something they can never have again. You. Number 4. Patience is not weakness. Cut them off before they exploit it. They thought they had you figured out. In their mind, your patience was a weakness, a flaw they could exploit. Every time you forgave, they saw it as permission to push the limits further. Every time you chose understanding over retaliation, they mistook it for naivety. They convinced themselves that because you stayed, you always would. That no matter how much they disrespected, manipulated, or neglected you, you would remain, a constant, unshakable force at their convenience. But what they never realized, what their arrogance blinded them from seeing, is that your patience wasn't a lack of strength. It was a test of their character, of their ability to recognize something rare, something valuable, and they failed miserably. You weren't patient because you were weak. You weren't tolerant because you didn't know any better. You were giving them a chance to rise to the occasion, to prove they were worthy of the space you allowed them to occupy. But they saw that grace as an invitation to take more, to test more, to assume you would always be there, waiting for them to finally wake up and act right. And then one day, you were done. Not with anger, not with resentment, just done. The silence that followed was deafening, not to you, but to them. Because now they stood alone in the aftermath, staring at the empty space where your presence used to be. The weight of what they lost became undeniable. See, people like them never expect patience to run out. They think they can delay change, push limits, and take endlessly without consequence. But patience is not infinite. And once it's gone, once you withdraw it, there's no getting it back. Now, they see the truth. You weren't weak for staying. They were weak for thinking you always would. They underestimated you, thinking you couldn't walk away. But the biggest lesson fate ever taught them: you were never afraid to leave. You were simply giving them time to prove they deserved you. And now they sit with that realization, drowning in regret, haunted by the fact that they mistook their greatest blessing for an easy target and lost everything in the process. Number 5. Nothing hurts a manipulator more than your indifference. Master it. They thought they had power over you. They convinced themselves that their absence would shake your world, that leaving you would leave a wound so deep you'd never recover. In their mind, they were the storm, and you were just a fragile house waiting to collapse under the weight of their departure. But what they never expected what they could never handle, was your complete and utter indifference. See, they were prepared for your tears. They would have been satisfied with your anger. They could have fed off your pain, using it as proof that they still had influence over you. But when they walked away and you didn't chase, when they pulled back and you didn't beg, when they disappeared and you didn't even flinch, that's when they realized they never had control. You weren't broken, you weren't lost, you weren't sitting in the dark replaying old conversations waiting for them to come back. No, you were thriving, smiling, moving forward as if they never existed, and that burns them alive. They check your social media expecting heartbreak, cryptic posts, maybe some self-pitying captions. Instead, they see you glowing, laughing, winning. Your energy is untouchable, your aura stronger than ever, and suddenly they don't know what to do with themselves. Because their entire strategy depended on you falling apart, on you showing some sign that they mattered enough to ruin you. But instead, their absence has done nothing but clear the space for better things, better people, and a better life. Nothing haunts a manipulator more than realizing they were never as significant as they thought. They wanted to be the reason for your downfall, but instead, they became nothing more than a forgotten chapter, one you closed without hesitation. They'll pretend they don't care, act like they never expected you to be affected. But deep down, they know. They know they lost something real, something rare, and they will never get it back. And the worst part? You don't even hate them. You don't feel anything at all. Number 6. Their ego won't save them. When reality hits, let it crush them. They strutted through life like they were royalty, convinced that people should be honored just to be in their presence. In their mind, they were the ultimate prize, the kind of person others would sacrifice their dignity for, chase endlessly, and fight to keep. Their charm, their looks, or maybe just their well-rehearsed detachment was supposed to be enough. They believed that playing hard to get made them untouchable, that withholding affection, breadcrumbing you, or keeping you in a cycle of highs and lows would keep you hooked forever. But reality doesn't cater to delusions, and nothing humbles a person faster than realizing they were never as special as they thought. They assumed you would always be there, always proving yourself, always feeding their bottomless need for validation. After all, who could ever get tired of them? They thought they were the one setting the rules, deciding when to give and when to take, keeping you on edge, making you question yourself. But then something happened. You woke up. You stopped playing, stopped reacting, stopped trying to prove your worth to someone who was never worthy of you in the first place. And just like that, their entire illusion crumbled. Because here's the truth. Their power was never real. It was borrowed. It only existed because you allowed it to. The mind games, the manipulation, the calculated silence, none of it worked once you withdrew your energy. And when you did, they had nothing. Now they're sitting in the wreckage of their own arrogance, forced to face a brutal truth. They weren't enough to keep you. They never had the substance, the depth, or the character to hold on to someone like you. That's why they played games. Because deep down, they knew they couldn't stand on their own. They relied on illusion, but illusions always fade. And now, as they stand there, stripped of their false confidence, staring at the reality they can no longer escape, the regret is suffocating. Their ego wrote a fantasy, but reality handed them the bill, and it's a price they'll never stop paying. Number 7. Always see the game before you play, expose their moves and exit. They thought they had it all figured out. Every calculated delay, every cold shoulder, every carefully placed breadcrumb designed to keep you guessing, they believed it was working. In their mind, they were the puppet master, skillfully pulling the strings while you danced for their approval. They saw themselves as untouchable, convinced that you were too caught up in their game to ever see the truth. But what they never accounted for, what their arrogance blinded them to, was the simple fact that you saw through it all along. You weren't blind. You weren't desperate. You weren't falling for anything. You were observing, studying their moves like a grandmaster in a chess match, watching as they arrogantly exposed their own weaknesses one by one. Every time they pulled away to see if you'd chase, you noticed. Every time they threw in a little test to make you prove your worth, you clocked it. Every attempt to plant seeds of doubt, to shake your confidence, to make you believe you had to fight for their approval, you saw right through it. And instead of falling deeper into their trap, you let them dig their own grave. They thought they were winning, thought they had the upper hand, but in reality, they were revealing exactly who they were. With every little mind game, they weren't playing you. They were exposing themselves. And by the time they realized it, it was far too late. Because here's the worst part for them. You didn't leave hurt. You left knowing. You didn't walk away confused, questioning your worth, wondering what went wrong. No, you walked away with clarity, with certainty, with the undeniable truth that they were never as smart, as charming, or as in control as they believed. And now? Now they sit with the most brutal realization of all, that the entire time they thought they were playing you, they were really just playing themselves. That's a humiliation they will never be able to shake. Number 8. Make no mistake, the one who walks away first holds the power. They were so sure of themselves, weren't they? Every vanishing act, every sudden mood shift, every breadcrumb they dropped, it was all part of their twisted strategy to keep you hooked. They wanted you restless, always questioning yourself, always searching for what you did wrong to make them pull away. It was never about love. It was about control. It was about feeding their fragile ego, making you prove your worth while they sat back, acting unbothered, acting like the prize. But what they never accounted for, the one thing their arrogance blinded them to, was that you weren't chasing because you were desperate. You chased because you cared. And the second that care ran out, the entire house of cards they built came crashing down. They assumed your loyalty was an unbreakable contract, that no matter how many times they played their little games, you'd always be there, waiting, proving, fighting. But they made one fatal mistake. They mistook your patience for permanence. And when you finally stopped caring, when you finally chose peace over their chaos, their whole reality shifted. Now they're spiraling, drowning in the same silence they once used as a weapon. They thought ignoring you would make you beg. It didn't. They thought acting distant would make you chase. You walked away instead. They thought making you feel like you were losing them would make you fight harder. It only made you realize they weren't worth the fight at all. And that's what haunts them now. The fact that they thought they had control over how the story ended, but in reality, they were never the author, just another forgotten chapter in your book. They thought they could string you along forever, keeping you locked in a cycle of false hope, always giving you just enough to keep you holding on. But instead of playing their game, you did the one thing they never expected. You called their bluff. No screaming, no drama, no desperate pleas. Just quiet, effortless detachment. And nothing, absolutely nothing destroys a person more than realizing the one they thought they had wrapped around their finger was simply choosing not to stay. Number 9. If they take you for granted, make sure they feel your absence. At first, they didn't notice. They were too caught up in their games, too arrogant to believe that someone like you could ever slip through their fingers. You were the constant, the reliable presence they thought would never disappear, always showing up, always giving, always caring. They assumed you'd be there no matter how much they tested you, no matter how little they gave in return. But assumptions are dangerous. And now the silence is deafening. The calls that once lit up their phone, gone. The warmth they never truly appreciated, vanished. The comfort of knowing someone was always there, ready to catch them when they fell, ripped away. They never imagined a day where your absence would weigh heavier than your presence, but now they feel it like a stone tied around their neck. Because here's the truth they never saw coming. Your energy wasn't just something nice to have, it was a lifeline. They used to brush off your kindness like it was nothing special. They thought anyone could replace what you gave so effortlessly. But now they see how wrong they were, because no one checks in the way you did. No one listens with the same depth. No one makes even the simplest moments feel meaningful. They thought you were replaceable, but what they failed to realize is that you weren't just a person in their life. You were the difference between feeling seen and feeling empty. Time has a cruel way of teaching lessons, and for them, the lesson is brutal. They didn't just lose a person, they lost an entire experience. The kind of loyalty, warmth, and understanding that can't be replicated. And worst of all, they know it's their fault. They wasted chances, ignored the warnings, took everything for granted until there was nothing left to take. Now, as they sit in the ruins of their own arrogance, they finally get it. You were never the one who needed them. They needed you. And that realization, that's a nightmare they'll never wake up from. Because once you're gone forever. No second chances, no way back. Just the weight of what they lost and the haunting truth that they will never, never find another you. Number 10. Their guilt is not your problem. Leave them to drown in regret. At the time, they thought they were untouchable. They believed they were the mastermind, keeping you guessing, keeping you on edge, making sure you never felt too comfortable. Every delay in response, every calculated cold shoulder, every breadcrumb they tossed your way was meant to keep you hooked, desperate for their approval. In their mind, it was strategy. A well-played game where they sat back, entertained by your efforts, feeding their ego with the idea that you were the one chasing while they remained indifferent. But now they see the truth. What they thought was power was nothing but immaturity. What they believed was control was nothing more than fear disguised as confidence. And what they called strategy, it was just a desperate attempt to mask their own insecurities. Because real strength doesn't need to manipulate. Real confidence doesn't test the people who care. And real love? Real love doesn't require someone to constantly second-guess where they stand. They were never the master of the game. They were the child playing with matches, unaware they were setting their own future on fire. And now, as the flames rise and the smoke thickens, they are left with the consequences of their foolishness. They sit with the weight of it all. The way they pushed you away just to see if you'd return. The way they faked indifference just to feel like they had control. The way they sabotaged something real, thinking they were outsmarting you, when in reality they were only digging their own grave. And now they're trapped in it. The thrill of the chase is gone. The game is over. The so-called power they thought they had has crumbled, leaving them face to face with one unavoidable truth. They lost you. Not because they weren't good enough, but because they weren't grown enough. And That is the kind of regret that doesn't fade. It lingers, it festers, it reminds them every single day that they played themselves. Because in the end, all they ever had to do was be real. But they chose to play games instead, and now the only thing they can play with is the thought of what could have been. Number 11. The truth always comes out. Let the world see their failure. Once upon a time, they walked around with their chest puffed up, bragging like they had mastered the game. They told their friends how they had you wrapped around their finger, how little effort it took to keep you around, how they could disappear for days, and you'd still be there waiting. Their audience ate it up, hyping them up, gassing their ego, laughing at the so-called control they had over you. But here's the thing about illusions. They don't last forever. And now the energy has shifted. The crowd that once cheered for them, they're not laughing anymore. They're watching how you moved on without hesitation, how you didn't just survive without them, you thrived. Watching how you became someone they could never reach again. And worse, they're watching them struggle in your absence. The person who once bragged about playing you now sits in silence, unable to talk about you without that bitter taste of regret. The same people who hyped them up are now side-eyeing them, questioning the choices they made. Man, you really messed that one up. They hear it in the way people speak to them now, in the way conversations shift uncomfortably whenever your name comes up. There's no admiration anymore, just quiet judgment, an unspoken understanding that they had something rare, and they fumbled it. See, when they had you, they could manipulate the narrative. They could pretend they were the one in control. But now, the truth is out. And nothing is more humiliating than being exposed as a fool in front of your own audience. They wanted to be the puppet master, but now they're the joke. Because no one is impressed anymore. Not when they see the stark contrast between you and them. You're glowing, unbothered, moving forward with your life as if they never even existed. And them? They're stuck, pretending not to care, all while drowning in the consequences of their own arrogance. And the worst part? They know they can never rewrite the story now. The truth is out, the mask has fallen, and everyone sees them for what they really are, a fool who lost the best thing they ever had. Number 12. You can't be replaced. Make sure they learn that too late. They thought they could always come back, that no matter how many times they played games, pushed you away or took you for granted, you would still be there, waiting, hoping, ready to welcome them back like nothing ever happened. They convinced themselves that time would erase the damage, that nostalgia would soften the wounds, that your heart would still recognize them as it once did. But now reality is hitting like a wrecking ball. They can feel it in their bones. You're not the same person anymore. The one who adored them, fought for them, believed in their potential. That version of you is gone. You've evolved, you've healed, you've outgrown them in ways they never saw coming. And the scariest part, there's no way back in. No amount of sweet words, no half-hearted apologies, no desperate attempts to rekindle what they destroyed will ever work. Because once the illusion shatters, once you truly see someone for who they are, there's no unseeing it. They could reach out, pretend they've changed, try to remind you of the good times, but it doesn't matter anymore. The warmth, the admiration, the softness you once had for them, it's gone. Not because you're bitter, not because you're angry, but because you simply don't care. And that indifference, that's what eats them alive. Because nothing messes with a person's head more than realizing they've become completely irrelevant to someone who once gave them everything. They thought you were replaceable. thought they could find someone new, recreate the same spark, the same depth, the same love. But deep down, they know the truth. What they had with you wasn't just about chemistry or attraction. It was about who you were, the way you loved, the way you made them feel, the way you saw them in a way no one else ever could. And that's something they can never replicate. And so, they're left with the harshest punishment of all. Not only did they lose you, but even if they got another chance, they could never have you in the way they once did. Because you're no longer someone who would even consider them a possibility. They gambled with something priceless, thinking they had unlimited chances. But now, all they have left is regret. And you've moved so far beyond them that they'll never even be a thought in your mind again. Number 13. You were the prize all along. Act like it and never look back. They thought they were the prize, the one who deserved the attention, the chase, the admiration. In their mind, they were the center of gravity, the one whose presence alone was a gift. They acted like you had to prove yourself, like your worth depended on how much effort you were willing to pour into keeping them interested. They believed they held all the power, sitting back, watching as you jumped through hoops, second-guessing yourself, constantly trying to meet their impossible standards. But now, reality has slapped them across the face, because the truth, the one they were too blind to see, is that it was never you who needed to prove anything. It was always them. They were the ones who should have been stepping up, matching your energy, proving that they even deserved a place in your life. But their arrogance, their foolish pride, made them believe that they were untouchable, that they could get away with giving you the bare minimum while expecting you to stay forever. And now it's too late. Now they sit there drowning in regret, replaying every single moment in their head. They see it clearly, the way you loved them without hesitation, the way you showed up even when they didn't deserve it, the way you believed in something real while they treated it like just another game. They thought they had options, that they could replace you whenever they wanted, that no matter how they acted, you'd always be waiting in the shadows. But what they never considered, what they were too foolish to realize, is that you are not the kind of person who waits. You don't beg for recognition. You don't demand validation. You don't sit around hoping someone will wake up and see your worth. Number. You move forward, and that's what haunts them. Because while they sit there, staring at the wreckage of what they destroyed, stewing in regret, you are gone, unbothered, uninterested, and completely out of their reach. They lost you, but the truth is, they never even measured up to begin with. Number 14. If they mishandle you, let them live with the loss forever. Regret has a way of creeping in slowly, like a shadow that stretches longer as the sun sets. At first, they brushed it off, laughed even, convincing themselves that losing you was just another part of the game. They told themselves they could replace you, that someone else, anyone else, would come along and fill the space you left behind. But reality is a cruel teacher, and time has a way of exposing the truth. They had something priceless, and they threw it away for nothing. That's what haunts them. Not just that they lost you, but how they lost you. Not because of a betrayal so big it shattered everything in an instant, but because of their own arrogance, their own foolishness. They played games, mistook your patience for weakness, assumed your kindness was infinite. They thought you'd always be there, no matter how many times they tested you, no matter how many times they crossed the line. But they pushed too far. And now, as they lie awake in the dead of night, as silence replaces the sound of your presence, as their new distractions fail to fill the void you left behind, one truth remains. It wasn't you who wasn't enough for them. It was them who was never enough for you. They try to run from it, try to drown it out with noise, with temporary replacements, with empty conversations that never quite measure up. But deep down, they feel it. They fumbled something they will never get back. And the worst part? It was completely avoidable. You were the best thing they mishandled. The kind of person people pray for, the kind they spend a lifetime searching for in every connection after you. And now, all they can do is sit with the weight of their own foolishness. Because time doesn't rewind, second chances don't always come, and some losses stay with you forever. Some mistakes don't sting until it's too late to fix them. And for them, losing you wasn't just about your absence, it was about what your absence revealed. It stripped them of their illusions, forcing them to see themselves for what they really are: immature, reckless, and blind to the value they once had in their hands. They thought playing games made them powerful, but in the end, it only made them fools. And now, long after you've moved on, after you've healed, after you've built a life where their name is nothing more than a distant, irrelevant memory, they're still stuck in the ruins of what could have been. Because while you've grown, they're frozen in time, haunted by a truth they'll never escape. They didn't just lose you, they lost the version of themselves that could have had you. And no matter where they go, no matter who they meet, no matter how much they try to convince themselves it doesn't matter, it does. Because deep down, they know the truth. They had the best, and they threw it away. And that's a mistake they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives. At the end of the day, life has a way of settling the score. Those who played games, who underestimated you, who thought they could control your worth, they lost, not you. While they sit in regret, haunted by what they threw away, you rise stronger, wiser, and untouchable. Their biggest punishment: watching you thrive in a life they'll never have access to again. So if you're ready to claim your power, leave the past behind and step into your unstoppable future. Like, subscribe, and stay locked in for more raw, unapologetic truths. Your glow-up starts now.